This is the Influencer Entrepreneurs Podcast with Jenny Melrose, teaching influencers and bloggers how to become successful entrepreneurs. This is episode 109 of the Influencer Entrepreneurs Podcast with Jenny Melrose. Today, we're going to talk about how to sell without selling your soul. I routinely hear my audience telling me, I can't sell. I feel like a used car salesman. Why would anyone want to buy from me? Well, today we're talking to Meredith Messenger, who is going to break down all the barriers that you think that there actually are when it comes to selling. We're going to make it simple and easy so that you can understand and be able to move forward with creating a product or service that you can sell. Now, before we dive into that, I want to make sure that you know that tickets are just about sold out for Influencer Entrepreneurs Academy. If you're not familiar, it is my conference. It is going to be here in Charlotte, April 2nd through the 4th of 2019. And it is a conference like no other, where you're actually going to have the opportunity to interact with the expert speakers, as well as then engage and apply the strategies that are taught during their sessions. So if you're looking for a conference where you're going to not only be able to learn from experts in the industry, but also then get to interact and create relationships with those people, as well as other professional bloggers, then this is the event for you. Make sure that you click over to the show notes that you can buy your ticket before we are totally sold out. All right, you guys, let's dive into this episode. All right, good morning, Meredith. How are you? I'm so excited to have you on the podcast.
Well, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. It's an honor. I'm excited.
Very good. Well, I'd love it if you would introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit of your background and your business, please.
Yeah, sure. So I am a recovering corporate America girl. I have transitioned out of corporate America. I've been in sales my entire life. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I guess let me say this. I view everything as selling. I've been selling since I was a little kid. And I started my career as a special education teacher. I taught emotionally disturbed children in inner city environments, like very traumatic things that have happened to them, hospital settings, that type of thing. And it's the work that I'm most proud of that I've ever done. But unfortunately, with that comes a large amount of pressure, a large amount of emotional stress. And so early, like 24-ish, I got burnt out. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do with myself? And there was an ad in the paper, believe it or not, sounds crazy. There was an ad in the paper for a sales support person for a healthcare technology startup firm. So there were like 5 people who worked there, and I joined, and it was this amazing experience of like learning from people consultants that were brilliant, that have worked with multi-million-dollar companies, and like figuring out how you're going to make payroll, and just this really cool experience. And I went through that whole thing, and we got bought and sold and stock options and all that jazz. So it was a really cool experience. One thing, I think that's when I finally started to realize, though, that there's a difference between men and women in the workplace. And I never really had that perception before I went into sales, and specifically before I went into like health, IT world, and the general startup world, because at that time, and even really now, most of that space is dominated by men. And so I remember being like the only woman in all these meetings, and that continued throughout my career. I went to another technology startup firm. I did a lot of consulting for insurance and financial services, large carriers and companies. So I've really worked with like thousands of entrepreneurs and small businesses in a variety of different spaces, and picked up a lot on what works and what doesn't. And somewhere along that journey, I zoomed in on the fact that there are tremendous ideas and tremendous potential that exists in these small businesses and entrepreneurial space. And thousands of them go out of business on a regular basis because they don't know how to sell. And something that was so natural for me, and I had the opportunity to be structured and technically trained in it, through my career, but something that was so obvious for me was so challenging for them. And I find that really heartbreaking, because the world is dramatically impacted by small business. So every entrepreneur that's successful, I like to describe it as a ripple effect. It impacts them. It impacts their family. It impacts generations of their family, their communities, and then so on and all through society, right? So all of these tides are lifted when these life-changing ideas can be capitalized on in like the entrepreneurial system. And so when I launched my business, it was really around that. I only work with small businesses. I'm done with like the corporate big sale type things. And yeah, I could probably make a lot more money in it, but my heart is in enabling entrepreneurial success and small business success because I've seen the impact that it has. So that's my background. My consulting firm is based just in that, helping people figure out in their business, where are all the opportunities for them to generate revenue? So as opposed to typical sales training, I look at, yes, how do you get more customers, but then also how do you collaborate? How do you right up your alley? You know, what do you do with influencers? How do you get your product into the hands of people through others? So strategic partnerships and distribution models. And then on the backside, like what can we do with our current clients? What opportunities are we missing there? What products or what holes in their needs are not being met by products that you could potentially bring to the market? So it's really a strategic approach to selling, and I love it. And I love all the people that I get to meet. I'm also a mom. I got 3 littles, so I do that too.
Yes. Well, I have to tell you, it's kind of interesting to me that you said that you were a former special ed teacher, because I'm a former reading specialist, inner city as well, so same population. And the fact that you've gotten back to teaching through your podcast, because I've listened, I'm a longtime listener, and then you teach the strategies and you combine what you learned from sales. So I think part of, and a large part of my audience is actually teachers that are bloggers that have now started to share, whether it's recipes, whether it's DIY, home decor. So I think as they're listening, they're probably thinking, okay, I can see myself in her, in the fact that you have done teaching, but what made that step to selling? What makes that? Because I think that that's where they get held up. They get this idea of, and you said it's mainly men. So, and of course, a large part of my audience is women. So how do you kind of step into that to be able to understand how to sell?
Yeah. So selling with soul, the name is important here because it means something. So I want to get this message out into the world that you can sell with a soul, meaning you can be servant-led, service-led, and have the best interest of everyone that you speak to, your buyers, in mind. So you can sell with a soul, like the actual meaning of the word soul, and you can sell with your own personality. So the other meaning of the word soul, right? So, you know, you can infuse yourself, your morals, your personality, your authentic being into your sales conversations. And I think one of the things that hangs a lot of people up is they think that there's a way to sell, and there is not one way to sell anything. I just want to get that through everybody's head. It's very possible for you to be yourself, to have casual conversations, and to still effectively sell. And that's typically what I'm focused on when I'm working with this type of audience, your type of listeners, is embracing their authentic sales voice and saying, I have something of value to offer the world, and I'm going to get it out there. And the other thing I'll say too is, you know, for teachers and all you guys, you're the best salespeople around. Mothers, all of you, you're all great salespeople. If you can convince your 2-year-old, like I can, to put on their freaking shoes in the morning, you're a great salesperson. Okay. Teachers underestimate, especially teachers underestimate their ability to sell. The way that you embrace, you know, your profession and get your kids to be engaged and to learn things that they have, like, let's be clear, they have zero desire to learn math, right? Or whatever it is you teach, but you do it in a way that sells them on the idea that it's fun, it's cool, and it's important. So you guys are selling. We're all selling. If you're trying to convince your husband on where you want to go for dinner, you're selling something. So all of these things are all sales. And if we can expand our view of what sales is, then we'll be much more comfortable with it. Does that make sense?
That was such a good, just the way that you made that come to life for so many of us. Because it is, I've always thought of myself as a teacher, as a mom, as a master negotiator, in that I can, like you said, you sell the idea of what it is that you want them to do. And I never really stood back and looked at it like that. So now let's kind of give an example, right? Where we know that our audience has a problem. They're coming to us now, and it's not negotiating with our kids that we're so used to negotiating with. Now it's negotiating with another adult, letting them know that this is the right product for them? How do we go about and not feel salesy when we go to do that?
So my first comment would be to look at sales as leadership. So you're really leading another person in a decision-making process that could benefit them. And I think as long as you are coming at it from a service mindset, and you're kind of putting aside, we all have goals. We all need to generate revenue and money and feed our families. So there's nothing wrong with that. But you're putting all that aside for the moment and you're interacting with this person, whether it's in digital form and you're writing an email, or whether it's in person or over the phone or Zoom or whatever. You're putting all of that aside for a second and you're getting really mindful with the person that you're talking to. You're putting yourself in their shoes. You're understanding what their struggle or their pain point or their deep down desire is. And you're marrying that with what you have to offer. And tell yourself this, if in that conversation, if you can't meet that need, then you're just going to say, I'm so sorry, but I'm not the right person for you. And that's okay. And that's the most anti-sales thing you can do. So if you don't like selling or you feel slimy about selling, just tell yourself, I'm just here to figure out how I can help this person. And I'm not going to try to cram something down their throat if I can't help them.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It
and
totally
I think
does.
that makes people feel a little bit better about it because there's no end game, right? You're like, okay, in this moment, I'm very mindful of the fact that this person is in need. Let me figure out how I can help, if I can help, and then we'll go from there.
It's that solution that you're giving them that's going to just not be geared towards the money that's behind it, but the help that you can give them. I love that.
And the way to immediately make that work is to ask questions. So take the focus off yourself. Don't talk anything about you. Don't talk anything about what you have to offer. No product stuff, no experience, nothing. And genuinely, with a genuine curiosity, ask them about them.
Right. Biggest struggles, what it is they're trying to foresee. Where do they see themselves? Yes. Oh my goodness. I so love that. Now, do you have kind of a plan for yourself when you go to work with another business that they're trying to sell their product or service?
Whether you're a seasoned podcaster or just thinking of starting a podcast, you need to listen to Buzzcast from the folks at Buzzsprout. Here we go! Buzzcast covers everything a podcaster should know, from marketing strategies and how to make money from your podcast to the latest and greatest tech and industry insights to keep you on the cutting edge. Follow Buzzcast by clicking the link in the description or go to buzzcast.buzzsprout.com and keep podcasting.
Yes. Yeah. So I always say failure to plan is planning to fail. And if you're uncomfortable with an activity, that's even more true. So like if you're a sales, I call the people I work with oftentimes sales adverse, meaning like they're like, don't want to do it, feel like I have to, but like don't want to be involved in this at all. Right. And so for especially when you're uncomfortable with something or afraid of something, you need a plan. So I always try to help my clients draw out what are the steps of the sales process for you, for like your particular offering. And let's just focus on what that means. Like, how do you have that first initial conversation? So your discovery calls were probably important to some of your listeners. But then even your email sequences. So like, what does that look like? What does that sales conversation sound like? And I try to help everyone understand that sales is not one event. Like making a sale is a series of small commitments that you get from the other person. And mentally, all you're trying to do is get to that next commitment. So if you solidify the fact that like you're good for this person and they're good for you, because as a business owner, you need to decide if you want to work with them. You don't have to work with everybody. They're good for you and you're good for them. You say, okay, what's the next thing I need to do to keep this conversation moving forward? And sometimes it's not like, okay, how do we work together? Sometimes it's like, I'm going to send you something. I want you to noodle on it, some information. And then on this date, we're going to talk again. That's another commitment, right? So that's the first sale. You've gotten them to look at it. You've gotten them to commit to another date with you. And then the next thing might be, I'm going to get them to an intro session or a webinar, whatever it is. But you figure out what those small steps are that are going to equal the sale at the end. And generally speaking, the higher the price, the more of those steps there are. So if you're selling a VIP day, which is a higher ticket item, versus a 1-hour consultation call, which is a lower ticket item, it's going to take a little bit longer, and be okay with that.
Right. I love the fact that you brought up the welcome sequence, because I think for a lot of my audience listeners, they're not doing a ton of one-on-one yet. I'm trying to warm them up to the idea that they can be an expert in meal planning or teaching our audience how to bake, whatever it might be. But they start off with that welcome sequence of just getting them to trust them and then start to think about what are some products that you can offer to them that are going to help that solution. So I love that you talk about the welcome sequence. We actually had someone come on last week, Jen Savich, from Simple Email Marketing, and she does a ton with the welcome sequence, making sure that it kind of gives that benefit to your audience that they need to have so that they can trust you and then continue on that process of moving them up to a higher price item or whatever it might be. So,
can I offer one tip that worked for me? I'm not an email expert, and Jen sounds like she's amazing. I'll have to listen to that episode. But one thing that worked for me as I was growing my email list, or as I was even trying to figure out what it was I was going to offer, was reaching out to every single person personally and initiating a conversation. Like, it's not a sales conversation, but it's more like, hey, I'm so glad you're here. I'm wicked excited. I'm just starting this thing, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are on A, B, and C, right? Like, literally, what are you struggling with most if, let's say, you're a baking expert? Is it that you have dietary restrictions in your family? What would be of interest so I know what to deliver to you, right? Like, I know what content, I know what it is you need from me because I want to serve your needs properly. So really initiating, when you can, those two-way conversations, you can solicit a lot of information from your target market if you're willing to open up that conversation.
Yes. And I think too, like, it doesn't even necessarily have to be that you're getting on the phone. You can do that now with social media through Instagram stories, where they constantly have made it with the features that are added so that you can get them engaged and get into their direct messages so you can have that conversation. Just a simple poll where you get a yes or no, and then you message the person that said yes and talk to them about what it is that made them say yes about that.
Yeah.
Such a great suggestion. I love it. So one of the things that I think that kind of holds people up, especially with my audience, is they'll get frustrated and think the product isn't necessarily what their audience wanted because they have a list of 100 and no one has bought.
Yeah.
Any kind of, is there like, I know for me, in my mind, sales is a number game. It's about finding the people that need your product then and there. They may need it 6 months down the road, and maybe they're going to sit on your list and get to that point where they do need it. But if you only have 100, are there kind of like, how do you know an idea is dead, I guess is what I'm looking for.
Yeah. So you're not going to know much. And Jenny might have spoke. It's Jenny, right? That was just on your podcast.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay. So she might have spoke about this, but you're not going to know much from a very small list. I always give people take a lot of caution with trying to draw any kind of conclusions out of a really small list. And I think you hit on a really sort of poignant point here. And it's all over the internet that there's a lot of large names, and I actually think it's trickery. It actually makes me mad, but there's a lot of large names that just say, like, put these products together, get it out there. You're going to generate a certain amount of money. They have huge lists. You guys need to know that, like, some of these people have 100,000 person lists. When you have 100,000 person list with an average conversion rate of, I don't know, like 3%, I think it's like high, like really high. You can generate enough revenue to launch a product like that, and then just wait for it to keep reoccurring, and then relaunch and get that momentum. But when you only have a list of 100, that's negative probability that you're going to get someone to sign up, or even get enough people to sign up to be able to say this is valuable or not. So I think some of the tactics that you just talked about are really important. Going out to the target market. I think one of the biggest issues that I see with people launching a business is their avatar isn't clear enough. So they have like a general idea of who they're talking to, but not a good enough idea to really market to it, or to find them and where they're hanging out, where they're chilling, right? Like, you want to go to where they're kicking it, because that's where you want to like sit down and say, okay, what are they into? Like, and then initiate those conversations. So sometimes women will say, well, I'm targeting 30 to 40-year-old moms, and they're into these 3 things. And I'll say, okay, so that's not really clear enough. Like, we need more information, because then they'll go to Facebook and they'll go in a group, and it's a completely wrong space. It's not the space at all. Like, if you're targeting Lululemon moms for a gymnastics class, there are certain places where they hang out, and you want to find where they are. And then you can do some of that market research there. The other thing you can do too, if you're worried that maybe your product just isn't on point, but you're not sure, is solicit in these groups, solicit people to participate for free, like, or just really discount it. Actually, discount's better because they have a little stake in the game, but just like get it out there, get that feedback, run through the program, and then decide, okay, do I have enough information to keep going forward, or should I stop, or, what is it? But don't do it just on your email responses. Does that make sense?
It totally does. And I think it's part of the issue that we run into is that so many bloggers will think, okay, I need to make money. So I'm going to push out a product. And then when it falls on its face, because they have a list of maybe 100, maybe even 500, they don't realize that it's just not enough to really know whether or not they're interested in it. And then they get back to that whole, I don't feel comfortable selling. I don't want to be a salesperson. I just want to help them. Well, and you are helping them. That's why you have a blog. All that free content is the help.
Right.
So being able to put this together all in one place. So
here's one more thing on the list that I see. Even if you have a decent size list, however you define that, it doesn't mean it's always in the market that you want to market to either. So I find that a lot of people are heavy on the quantity and low on the quality. So they're marketing to a lot of people and their list may grow fairly rapidly, but it's not targeted enough or niche enough to really resonate. It's a broad perspective of an audience. And then when you go to really target a particular niche, you don't get much response because the people on your list are not the people that you actually want in the program. So you really have to sit down, and it's painful because I actually had to do this. I culled my email list down from 1,500 to 600 this year. And I literally thought I was going to throw up because you're attached to that number and you're scratching and clawing for every email, sign up, right? So then I had to do it because what I realized was that I had a lot of people on my list that I'm no longer targeting. They weren't drawing revenue into my business. So I did a little bit of a pivot and got much more niched and much more targeted in my business, which made everything a ton easier. But in the process, I realized I needed to do that on my email list too. In order to make those emails effective, to get engagement and click-throughs. So I actually did that. I went through my email list. I took the, people who are, not actively opening, not actively clicking. I took them off the list, and it was painful, but it's a better list.
Absolutely. That was one of the things that we talked about in last week's interview too, about the re-engagement sequence, figuring out that it's the right people and to get them clicking again, wake them up. Then it's that mindset again. I feel like when you go to clean your list of holy crap, I had 1,500, now I'm down to 600. Oh, what a gut shot. Yeah. But in reality, if those people that you deleted are just going to sit on your list, you're paying for them.
That's right.
You have to realize that the money that you're putting out for them, you're never going to get back if they're not interested in your content or the products that you put together. So that's super smart. I also have to tell you that I love the fact that you talked about the avatar, because that's something that I harp on. I feel like making sure they really understand who it is that they're talking to. But I love the addition of what you said about the Facebook groups, of knowing where they hang out and going and finding those places to be with them. It's so key.
Well, when you're launching something, it's logical, but it's easy to get lost in your own space when it's just you trying to launch a business or to run a business. And so it's logical to say that when nobody knows what you're doing or who you are, you need to go out and actually tell them. They're not going to come to you. I think a lot of people have a misconception when they launch something and it's really awesome. And the ideas are awesome. It's not about your idea, but nobody knows who you are. So you have to draw them in as opposed to them coming to you. So that takes legwork. It takes a lot of those conversations, either online or in person. It takes speaking or advertising or whatever your plans are, but you have to put yourself out there. They're not going to come to you.
Yes. And they got to build that level of trust. There's so much that's out there, whether you're swiping up, you're swiping left, you're swiping right, whatever direction you're swiping, that if they don't, not everyone sees it. And I think we think that they do, when in reality, I know for a fact, I've had people that have been part of my membership site or bought a course of mine and then turned around after a year of being on my list and said, oh, I didn't know you had a podcast. And I was like, wait, what? How do you not know that? But it's because we just assume that every time we say something, they're listening or seeing it. And with algorithms, of course, now they're just not. So it's okay to routinely remind them of the value that you can provide them with.
I love that. And I also think too, as you grow your business, segmentation becomes really important. So once you're engaged with someone, so in the example that you just gave, your membership site, a way to segment, okay, these people have bought the membership site, it's this profile person. How can I then change my marketing to them? And for those of you who are adverse to this whole sort of thing, it's just conversation, right? How do I direct my conversation with them so that now I can steer them towards some of the other things I offer? And be really strategic about that. When you're first launching, you don't have to worry about this. You really want to get yourself out there. You want to get over all the jitters, over all the fear, collect the feedback and move forward. But as you grow your business, if you're in the next stage, then you want to start thinking about things like that. You want to start thinking about, okay, how do I look at people differently that I've interacted with? And how do those conversations change?
Yes. And I think the way that you talked about segmenting it is so important, because it is a part where I feel like I have people that come to me that'll say, what's my next step within your programs? And I'm like, wait, oh crap, I didn't do a good enough job to make sure that you knew that. That is something that I feel like I might be lacking, because I do have a couple different programs and they're meant for different people at different levels, but I'm obviously not communicating that this is where you need to go next. So they just logically do it themselves. So
yeah. Well, and think about this for a second, not to scare you or anyone else. I think about it. What if that person hadn't come? Like for every person that mentions to you, there's like, I guarantee you 50 more, well, far more that will never ask, because that's not their job. It's our job as business owners and helpers, right? To say, did you know that we also do this? But there's 50 that didn't ask. And so then you think to yourself, oh, what opportunities did I miss out on this whole time because I hadn't thought about like what my strategy is? And so mostly in my line of business, mostly everybody calls me because they say, I want to get more new clients. Right. But my challenge to them is, where are all the other opportunities and actually less costly, easier opportunities to generate revenue in your business? And oftentimes that's looking in your current client base.
Yes. That warm audience. What is it? It's the 80-20 rule to sales and marketing, that 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your list or your clients. Yeah. Yes. I love that. So smart. And I've definitely found that. I think that that's why I've added other programs, but then I forget to articulate that unless they're, like you said, asking me. And there's all those that are sitting on the sidelines, not asking the questions. It's such a good reminder to think about that.
One other tip that I want to throw out there for folks looking to rapidly grow their business would be to implement a referral program. Nobody does this. And I work with clients every single day to really figure out how to do this, no matter what business you're in, whether it's all digital, part, virtual, but you're talking to people, whatever, you can implement a referral program. And you should be, so I call it a BOGO strategy for those ladies out there who know what a BOGO is. I'm a fan of BOGOs. I call it a BOGO strategy. For every client you get into your business that you work hard, you pay for them to come into your business, you work hard to deliver, and you do a really good job with, you should get another client from them. Whether that's a referral or a testimonial, but you should be engaging them and making them feel special enough to become a center of influence for you. And that's a person who refers, that's a person who gives testimonials and case studies. So they should be generating more revenue for you than just that initial sale.
I love it. So now we're going to link to in the show notes your masterclass. Can you tell everybody a little bit about it and how much time to allot, how it kind of goes through and what you'll be covering?
Yeah, it's super easy, guys. It's an audio masterclass. It's a listen. It's about an hour, I believe, somewhere around an hour. And it's 3 simple strategies you can employ to sell anything to anyone, anywhere. And it's really, really focused on the servant mindset and the idea that sales is what you make it. So all the negative experiences you might have in sales, all the connotations that you have, it's about challenging those, doing some exercises to really understand what your mindset is and where you're held up. And then some strategies on how to fix it, like asking questions and changing perspectives and things like that. So I've gotten a lot of great feedback on it, and I think you guys will like it too.
I'm sure they will, because they are huge. They love any sort of learning. It's those teachers that are sitting in my audience that absolutely love it, continuing to learn more about their field. What are also some of the best places to find you? So Instagram, where can we find you?
My gosh. So I'm everywhere, but my primary places are LinkedIn, and I'm on Instagram. I'm trying to build my Instagram out a little bit. I haven't been great about it just because you can't be all the things, right? In all the places. So, but that is a place that I'm focused on, and it's more fun, less businessy. And I have a podcast. It's called the Selling with Soul podcast. If you are interested in kind of exploring how to blow up your sales skills a little bit, tune in. Some of the topics might be really pertinent for your audience and for you listeners. So I invite you to give that a chance, and otherwise I'll see you on Instagram or LinkedIn.
No, that's awesome. No, we're going to definitely link to those in the show notes, but what is your Instagram account? Is it under @Meredith Messenger or it is? Okay, perfect. Yep. And the podcast, for those that are driving and trying to keep an eye on this, is Selling with Soul with Meredith Messenger. So if you search for that on iTunes, your podcast listener going from one to the next, it's always a smart thing to do. Yeah. Meredith, thank you so much. This was so informative. I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me.
Thank you for having me. If I can help anybody out there, any ladies building their business, or men, I guess I should say, anyone building their business, give me a shout out, because I feel like it's my duty to give back what I've been given. So even if it's a quick question, happy to help.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Clearly, Meredith had a ton of great tips to be able to provide you with the confidence that you can help and serve your audience. When you take it from that standpoint of you are helping solve a problem, you don't feel like you're selling, and you're just helping those that you're already creating great free content for. I appreciate you guys so much for taking the time to listen in. If you have a chance, I would even appreciate it more if you could tag me on Instagram stories at Jenny_Melrose and let me see how you're listening to the podcast. It's one of my favorite things to see. I've had people tag me when they've been listening to it, running in the pool. I've had people tag me when they're doing a long car trip and binging. Let me see where you're listening to the podcast. And I appreciate you guys so much for taking the time also to leave a review on iTunes. It helps others who are looking for new podcasts to listen to be able to find this one. So thank you guys so much, and I will see you all next time.